afternoon. Thank you for coming. It's with great pleasure and a great honor. I would like to introduce you to someone who's a phenomenal character designer and children's book illustrator. He has worked in several studios, and now he's working at DreamWorks as a storyboard artist. He has a very appealing and iconic style, and it's a pleasure and luxury that we have him with us tonight. So without any further ado, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Colin Jack.
Thank you. And that's how my voice sounds. That's awful. I'm sorry, guys. This is going to be a long hour. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about myself for a minute so we get you some context of who I am. So I've been working in animation for about 15 years now. I graduated in 2002. Some of you probably weren't even born yet. But before that, I saw this cartoon called Tiny Toons. Has anybody ever seen? Thank God. Oh, good. Retro, right, guys? And there was an episode where they explained that people make cartoons, like actual people. And I was 9, and I was like, that's it. That's exactly what I want to do with the rest of my life. And it took another 17 years, almost, to go to college and then start working in the animation industry. And I went to Capella University for about 2 years, and then I graduated. And at that time, there was absolutely no work in the animation industry in Vancouver, which is where I'm from. So I worked at Walmart for a year, and just focusing on what the problem also was. My portfolio wasn't that good at all. I wasn't a strong student. There are some people in school that are naturally gifted and naturally and are just awesome from day one. I wasn't at all. I was pretty effing bad. So it came down to me to go, well, I could try something else so I could go to work. So what I did was every day after my shift at Walmart, I would go home in my mom's basement, and I would work for about 8 hours every day to get my portfolio better, because the tools were given to me in my education. And from there, I got my first job, but it took a year. And then from there, it was like one small freelance job led to another small freelance job, led to character designing, led to moving to Toronto, where I found out that in TV, especially in Canada, you very much work in a system. And I didn't realize that, hey, you could totally make art on your own time as well and discover an individual voice, until I went to Toronto and I saw all these amazing artists just doing their own books and getting published. And you don't have to work in animation, you can work in publishing too, because you have drawing disciplines. So with that in mind, I started focusing on my own personal aesthetic and style. And then going forward with that, I said, well, you know what, I like Canada, because, the weather's amazing, not amazing at all. And then I said, I really want to work in feature animation. So I just sort of reached out on LinkedIn to a art director by the name of Ralph Eggleston, who works at Pixar. And I said, hi. I'd very much like to work at a feature animation studio in art or story. Take a look at my portfolio. And he looked at it and he said, can I call you? So about an hour later, we're on the phone talking to Ralph Eggleston. And he said, I gotta tell you, you're a story guy. You could do character design and you could be fine at it, but everything you draw is based in story. So, and by that time, I've done so many episodes of television and storyboarding. I just hated it. But TV boarding is very flat. It's changed now, apparently. Apparently it's awesome, but when I was working in it, it was not that. But he said, just remember movies, remember why you love them, and board a sequence. And from there, I sat down, and I developed a character, I boarded the sequence, and I sent it out to a few studios, and I got a job at Sony, working on Hotel T. So that's kind of very brief, abridged version of like how I started getting into feature animation. And then from Sony, from that was Book of Life, and then from Book of Life was DreamWorks. So we're all caught up. So today I'm going to sort of take you through the storyboarding process from inception to pretty much final. And we're going to look at a couple of sequences I've done for Hotel T, a couple of sequences I've done for Boss Baby, maybe, and sort of like what the whole process, particularly working in story, is about. Sound good? Yeah, not quiet head nod. Sorry. Okay, good. So, is this still working? So, when you start working at a studio, you get something what's called a launch, where it's a set time where you sit down with the director and they give you their thoughts on the script pages that you've been assigned. So, what was obvious to me when I first started working in feature was the director comes in and he is bogged down with like 50 other things, and he's just going to tell you a few sporadic notes, and then he's going to move on to whatever he has to do next. So I've started doing this thing called what I call a pre-launch, is when I'll get the script pages, and rather than just reading and go, okay, I kind of know what's going on, I'll get the script pages and I'll start working or preparing to talk to my director. So, funny story about this. I just had a lot of time in my hotel room this morning, so I just did a visual guide to all this. So forgive the terrible drawings, but you'll get the idea. Yeah, that's me. So yeah, prepare. You get the script, you read it a couple of times, but you should really just start thinking about what you can contribute to the story, because every script that you work on in animation is not the locked script, or the locked movie for that matter. It is a guideline, and it should be treated as such. So there are some times when you get pages and you get a line of script action saying, and they fight. It's like, well, what is that going to be? Like, we have no idea, so it's up to you to start taking notes, do some gag drawings, and bring your individual voice, because that's what you're there for. You're there to be a part of this recipe that is the film. So, I know some of you are probably asking what are gag drawings, so I'm just going to pull some of them up right now. Can I show this? I can totally show this. These are from Trolls. So basically, I would sit down with just paper and marker and just sort of start doing little gag drawings. Nothing cinematic, nothing, where they can cut this into a reel or anything like that. This is just pure ideas. So like Queen Poppy coming up to a mountain, having the mountain go, "Hey, do you mind?" and having it break off, or having one of the talking plants have bugs stuck in its teeth. Or, has anyone seen this movie, by the way? I'm just talking. 5 of you. Good. Check it out. It's really good. But like ideas of like the grumpy troll doesn't want to go to a party, so having like the Queen Poppy throw an invitation in her hair, having the spiders sound like giant Muppets. Just anything to, oh yeah. And there's this really classy gag in Trolls where they poop cupcakes, and I thought it would be just hilarious if everybody in every background troll would just be eating these cupcakes throughout the film. They didn't do it. Or Poppy putting invitations in people's butts, or putting hair through their head. So like this kind of stuff, what it does is it gets you thinking about the movie, but it also encourages the person that you're supposed to be encouraging, and that is your director. So when you go into a launch, and he's sitting there in his little chair and his little hat, you come in and you go, well, I have the script and I have a couple of drawings and ideas for you. So he's immediately encouraged. And then what happens there now is not him telling you what to do, but a conversation between two film nerds, hopefully. So what that does is, like, he's going to start talking about ideas, you're going to have ideas, and then what you're going to get is hopefully a pile more work, because it's not what's going to be in the script. But he is going to be just, I'm not saying this to manipulate you, the director, I'm just saying that this is the best way to sort of start investing in this, in a movie that you're going to be on for like 2 to 3 years. So it doesn't it's not your sequence or not your movie. It's not the director's sequence. It's the movie sequence now. What usually happens after a launch is a lot of story artists do this. They chill. They figure that their day is done, and they're going to start boarding the next day. I remember doing this, just that, not on a beach, but I mean, it's California, so some people I'm sure do it, but I remember getting launched and then sitting at my desk for the majority of the day, kind of thinking about my sequence, but kind of not. And I would see this, this woman by the name of Catherine Radar. She was a fantastic story artist. She'd get launched and she'd just go right into her office and she'd start drawing. And Catherine's boards are the best. She's worked on, you know, Dragons, all 3 Dragons films, all the 3 Kung Fu Panda movies. And I asked her, why do you do that? She's like, so I can just get it out. So it's not just sitting there. So no break. You have basically 5 days starting now. That's the deadline. So put it down on paper, which I found actually is really helpful. I think that especially at DreamWorks, we kind of went back to paper a little bit during a rethink of how we do the story process there. And what I found with that is that there aren't any distractions, like a big shiny screen with YouTube and IMDb and everything. Like, everybody here work digitally? Like, no? You guys work on paper? Good for you. I found it super distracting. So I would waste time, and I just felt like, you know, if you sit down and you start drawing, then you have at least something to show. And I would burn through my sequence in about a day, like on paper. So when I get to the director again, I would just sort of grab him in the hallway and I would pitch the shape of the sequence, which is going to happen right here. So basically what happens now is that in a day I've turned over the sequence to him, and we're talking again about what this really needs to be. And it's not a huge waste of time. It is basically another exchange of ideas. And from there, usually the shape kind of works out just by moving some shots around, moving paper around, and you just get more clarity. So on day 3, I can grab those pieces of paper, those thumbnails, those ideas, and start scanning them so I can start working the computer and get things ready for animatic, which is shot planning, which is, it's the roughest part of my job. It's where you are basically, you're not doing any kind of performance or funny jokes. You are basically just planning, you're drawing shots and setting the stage for what your character is going to do in it. So a really great, well, a sequence that I did that was kind of a great sort of template for how I move forward, and that was a sequence I did in Hotel Transylvania, which 5 of you probably saw, at least 5? 6, 7, that's amazing. So you're gonna have to bear with me. I haven't pitched this in about 7 years. So here we go. So in the film, give you some context. Dracula is trying to get Johnny back for Mavis. Mavis is his daughter, and she's in love with him, and she's really sad now he's gone away. So Dracula's like, what have I done? And is now hauling ass and trying to grab him. So we start on the wheel, and we go... What's the plan, Drac? We got to find Johnny and bring him back to Mavis before the sun comes up. Uh-oh, the sun's coming up. Finds a clue, shoe comes in. Oh, it's Johnny's shoe. Oh, disgusting. Frank, Murray, get over here. What? What do you want me to do with that? Smell it and track it. Nah, this thing is dead, man. Like, I've smelled so many diapers with this. And he's got a little whistle, which you can't hear because it's dog whistle. Cut wide. Drac's looking around. The guy's in the car looking around. Still looking around, and then all of a sudden you hear spiraling towards the car, and you're like, oh! And this one's on the window. All right, you guys, got me that. Smell this. Can you find him? Nah, forget it, Dad. And then, hey, that's for Mom. Super classy. I said, Murray, we must hurry. We don't have time for butt stuff. Oh, you're right. Sorry, Drac. Winnie, front and center. And we cut to all these puppies sort of turning around, tearing assing, and then stop. And then walks little Minnie, and then you go back. So that's kind of the sequence. But what I learned from this was working with Gendy was the importance of setting up each shot. Because does anybody know the story about Hotel Transylvania and how quickly we had to turn this around? We had about 8 months from like when I started to release. Because this movie was being in development at Sony for, I think, 8 years. And it was cycled through 4 directors. And then Gendy came in, and they grabbed a whole new story team, and they said, well, we got to make this in basically 8 months. So what was apparent was that we didn't have time for all the pretty shading and stuff like that we do in boards most of the time because we have lots of time. This was very much, and for me it was good because it was an aggressive TV schedule. But what Gendy taught me was like, just plan the shots, because the shots can tell you more than a bunch of really soft acting. So like keeping things on a dynamic angle, like we know that this is, there's action happening, and then keep that flowing all the way through, but also clarity. Like in this shot, I can't take credit for the sequence really, because Gendy was like talking me through the whole thing. But even in this shot where like, even where the trees are like lightly framed, you know exactly where that car is going to go. Drawing camera movies like this, like when I first started, I would draw every blade of grass and everything, but you don't need to. All you need to do is just draw the motion, and then layout and previs will do the rest. Cutting to hard cutting to a very important piece of information, which is Johnny's shirt, was something that I would never think of. Like when I first started working on this, I was like, he gets out of the car, he walks over to the shirt, rather than just time cutting right to getting to the point of this, which is what they're looking for. And then knowing when to go kind of flat for comedy, because if you were to put this in sort of an over-the-shoulder shot, it immediately implies that there's something dramatic happening. There's nothing dramatic about smelling dirty shirts. There might be. So also just framing shots like this, like using the branches to put your eye exactly where they are. So even when we're cutting wide, we know exactly where Drac is, exactly where Murray is. And then cutting flat again for for comedy of dogs smelling butts and dirty shirts. So yeah. So the reason why I like this sequence is the variety of it. Like, and Gendy's a master at this. If you're watching the new Samurai Jack show, he'll get super dynamic and then he'll go super flat, just to sort of visually break your eyes. And he does it. He did it in the first Hotel T. I haven't seen Hotel T2 yet, but I hear it's really good. All right. So back to this. So shot planning for me takes the day, and that's a 10-hour day for me of just going in and cutting and trying to figure out what's for drama, what's for comedy. Most of the time I do comedy, so things are pretty flat, but then you need to sort of hammer in a point, and I get really discouraged around this time because it's generally I do about 30 to 60 panels that day, which for me is just like that is low. But what I've done in this step is all the cinema is done at this point. So all I have to do next is, oh shit, I might get some feedback at this time, which is always good to do when you're working on a story team. And they'll have ideas, you have ideas, and you can change it at this point. Because once you start getting into focusing on the performance, where you're doing all the extra poses, all the extra eyebrow wiggles, that's when things start getting intense. But from your 30 to 60 panels, I guarantee you'll balloon out to anywhere from 300 to 400 panels, just getting performance. And then while you're also doing this, you're discovering extra shots, extra gags, and some shots that, oh yeah, this is great. And other things that will, invariably just get your sequence. So this happens to me all the time. So it's like day 5, my pitch is at, a little bit after lunch, and I slept in because I needed it, and and this happens, where I start thinking about my sequence again, and I get an idea. So usually, I think most story artists go, well, we'll get it on the next one. Me, no. I will run right back to the studio, and probably end up scribbling in another 50 to 60 panels of extra content. And that is always the part that sticks in that first pass. So when we're pitching, it usually is pretty successful, and we're all laughing here. And until we get, do it again. So that's the process, really. And what I mean by do it again is we will be doing that again for about 2 years, roughly. And it's usually a handful of sequences. Like, I worked on Boss Baby for almost 2 years, and I worked on 3 sequences for 2 years. Which brings me to Boss Baby. And 5 years ago. Yeah. Has anyone seen this movie, by the way? 1. Okay, so let me give you a bit of context while I pitch through this sequence that I haven't seen in 2.5 years. Timmy, the main kid, is leading this very idyllic life and enjoying being a single kid. And then all of a sudden, this new baby comes in, and he can conveniently talk to, like, Alec Baldwin. Oh yeah, get ready. This shit's gonna get weird, guys. I'm sorry. I was launched on this sequence about 2.5 years ago, and what this sequence is about is there's a moment where Tim and Boss Baby, like Tim's figured out Boss Baby can talk, and Boss Baby's like, if you get in my way, there's going to be cutbacks. And Tim kind of writes it off.
and then we'll continue doing one by
Okay.
one. And we have some questions online as well from the online students.
Okay.
So you guys feel free to ask Colin anything you would like, I mean, regarding his work.
Yeah.
And I'll see if we have any questions online.
Shoot. Well, I feel good. No, no. You know, it's funny because I think like just even when I was talking about it's not my movie, and it's a funny thing. A teacher said to me once was you gotta love every drawing and then not love every drawing. So once it is out of your hands and once it goes to edit, it's not yours. And decisions are going to get made. And having directed something myself, even though I boarded it, I was in editorial and I was like, oof, I would cut that shot out, get rid of that. And it's not personal. It is basically to benefit the story or trying to make something clearer. So it'd be weird if it didn't bother me, but because you have to legitimately care about these things. These are 2-3 years of your life. So, yeah, like it bothers you, but at the same time, you're like, when you look at it, like Boss Baby, when you look at it after it's done and you see the whole thing, you're like, all right, I get it. It was to serve as a story. Anyone else?
A question from an online student.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking, or she, who or what was the inspiration for How to Train Your Dragon, if you know?
It's based on a series of kids' books. I couldn't tell you the author.
That's the question. It's usually first year it's really you, but as the productions and the timelines get tighter and tighter and tighter, you are just going to collaborate. And for me, like, especially working at DreamWorks, everyone's really good. Like, everyone's like at the top of their game. So it would just benefit me and my stuff if I walk over and go talk to one of these like amazing people. Like, I remember sitting down having coffee with Mike Suri. I'm like, how the heck? Who, if you don't know, was one of the lead animators on Pocahontas and a bunch of the 90s Disney films, but he's also a story artist that he animated Timon. But I'm sitting there having coffee with Mike Suri. It's like, why wouldn't I get Mike Suri's opinion on anything ever? So to me, it just makes you a stronger artist. You just have to be brave and go, you know what, there's a good chance they're just not going to get it. But that's the story. Yes, let's talk about that. We live that. No, I was kidding. Oh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I was, now if I were to do it again today, I wouldn't do what I did, but what I did was, there's nothing more humbling than having a buddy of yours from college bump into you at Walmart and go, how's it going? And they're working. Yeah, luckily I had a really great circle of friends there, and they were all like, they are still ridiculously really good, but they were all good at what they did, and they were sympathetic to my plight. And I would bring my pages of drawings to them, and they would critique it. But just based on that, it was hard not to be influenced by them when I first started out. But in the end, it got me up to industry standard as well. Do I draw like that anymore? Absolutely not. But to get me in, it was totally worth it. We have a question from an online student. How many hours a day do you draw? do you get time off? And the third question, if you're in a union.
Sorry?
If you're in a union.
I am in the union, but I've been in the union for about 2 years. I was up at PDI DreamWorks for the first two, and they're not by the union. But what was the first? What was the question?
How many hours a day do you
How many
draw?
hours a day do I draw? So my average day starts around 5 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, that's disgusting. But I go to bed early because I'm old. So I get up, do the morning routine stuff, and then head over to work. And I'm at the campus around 7. But what I do is I draw for myself for at least the first hour to 2 hours. And that's really important. We're going to veer off topic here really quick. But doing that is what, and sort of exercising your own personal voice is going to help inform you when you start your job during the day. So I sit, I draw for about 2.5 hours. I'll probably post it on Instagram because I need gratification. And then I will go to work, and I'll start from 9 and I'll go till about 5. And then I'll go home and do all the dad stuff. But then, hold on. And if I'm doing a kid's book, then there's at least another 2 to 3 hours before I go to bed, around 10:30, where I'm working on children's books.
Okay, one. Colin, I have to repeat his question for the online students.
Oh, okay.
How much time do you get for a complete sequence?
One complete sequence should probably take a week. You can definitely push it to a week and a half. Like the nightmare sequence took me about a week and a half because I had to write it and come up with it. So it's, you know, it sounds like not a lot of time, but for anybody who's worked in television, where you get about 17 pages and you got to do that in a month, getting 3 pages of script and do it in a week, you're like, oh my gosh, what? Are you sitting there? And I work on this and that sequence will come back to you maybe 2-3 times. So when the sequence is done, you're on it for a month before it goes down to editorial. Sometimes you get like one that's like, oh, it's sent to edit and that's it, but very rarely.
I have 2 questions. One, what's your advice for someone who wants to become an animator?
Don't do it. No, do it. Like, that's a vague question. Go to school. I guess the best thing you can do if you want to become an animator is look at the people who did it the earliest. And just know that that process has not changed in 70, 80 years at all. And you got to work at it. And if you're not willing to work at it, you got to work at it every day. Because there's young up-and-comers like you guys who are going to be amazing coming out of school. So if you're not constantly working at your craft, then I say don't bother.
Good advice.
Yeah.
Second question, what has been your biggest challenge while putting a sequence together?
Sitting down at my desk. Yeah, my biggest challenge when putting a sequence together is sometimes you just don't agree with the direction that the story is taking, or you don't understand these characters. And that's a huge problem. That's happened to me, I'm lucky, it's happened to me twice, and it's always been when I've been guest starring on movies. And guest starring is sometimes you are between pictures, and another production just needs someone to come in and board a sequence for a screening. And those are the times where you're sort of you're thrust in, you see kind of what they're doing, but nothing's finished, and you don't know who the characters are, and you just kind of have to make the most of it. And also, it's when you're expected to, I draw fairly cartoony, when you're expected to draw realistically, it can be a bit of a stretch. But the best thing you can do with that is just take it as a learning experience, and move on when you're done.
We'll do one more question. Jordan.
Time, but also my love of it. Again, like I watched some recent shows on TV, and I think TV looks amazing. But when I was doing it, it was not that. And I just love movies. So the opportunity to help come in and make movies is something that, like, movies have influenced me my entire life. So for me, it was just sort of like a preference more than anything. And then also, cinema has a lot more shot variation and things that you can do with the camera, transitions that, again, I'm not saying this is a generality now because some shows are amazing, but we couldn't do weird transitions. We couldn't, like, we had to have everyone on an even plane. Like, everything had to be almost proscenium. And you didn't get a sense of scope with any of these shows that I was working on. So with film, it's blue sky. You can do anything. So that my preference has always been feature.
We'll do this. I can get it off. We'll do one more question.
Yeah. I work at the studio.
The question was if he works from home or the studio.
I work at the studio. I haven't worked at home in about 5 or 6 years. Little piece of advice when you do, if you decide you want to work at home as a freelancer, get dressed. Like, wear clothes like you're going to a job. I found that when I was freelancing a lot in Toronto, I would just wear a robe and like my pajamas, and that would be my outfit. And it just, you have no energy, and you don't want to do anything except sit in your jammies and like eat cereal.
It's true.
So just treat it like a job, kids. Take it from me. Don't be like this. Don't be like me.
All right. Thank you so much, Colin.
Thanks, guys. Can I say one more thing?
Of course. There's nothing
I don't know if I already said. Did I already talk about your individual voice as an artist? I'm going to talk a little bit more about that really quick.
Go ahead.
So I think I talked about like my career path, and what changed for me was seeing other artists being unique. And I can tell you without a doubt that having an individual voice, and really, like, for me, was looking at artists that I admire when I was growing up, is the reason I work where I work and I do what I do. Discovering that and fostering that is what's going to make you stand out in your career. So it's good, especially in animation. Sometimes you have to conform, but I could do 2 hours of drawings in the morning. Just keep fostering your own stuff, because that's what's going to get you to that next level. Okay? That's it.